Mike. Oh, I got it. Okay, welcome everyone. This budget committee meeting of the whole for Tuesday, May 28th. Thank you all for attending. We're going to call this meeting to order, slightly behind time at 1:33. And I'll need a motion to adopt the agenda from a member of committee. Councillor Davidson, thank you very much. Any discussion there? All in favor? Okay, any opposed? That carries. Does any member have a disclosure of pecuniary interest at this time? I see none. We don't have any delegations, and we can move right into scheduled business. So the first item is a presentation by Gigi Lee, our Director of Financial Services and Treasurer. And this will be up to a 20-minute presentation. Go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, it's my pleasure to come before you today at the Budget Committee of the Whole meeting to provide a financial overview of the city through a number of year-end reports that are on the agenda. Typically, these year-end reports would come forward at a BCW in late June, along with the budget strategy. With the school board by-election, we have advanced the year-end reports to today, and the budget strategy will come forward at the June 11 Budget Committee of the Whole. For the last couple of years, we have been reporting on the financial impact of COVID-19 and the uncertainty in those unprecedented times. We have been experiencing the new normal as we emerge from the pandemic. This new normal brings along financial pressures as well as opportunities. The reports on today's agenda reflect fiscal leadership to arise from the pandemic in a strong financial position. With that, I'll walk through the highlight of the 2023 year-end operating results, which is agenda item 5.1. Next slide, please. The operating fund is predominantly funded through property tax revenues, as well as user fees, which are used to support city services. The budget process produces an operating budget that provides residents and businesses with quality services through the effective and efficient use of resources. The budget is a financial expression of a static plan based on known information at the time. Over the course of the year, circumstances often arise that change the plan. The costing or financials of the plan will also need to adjust, resulting in budget variances, which is a normal part of business. As a whole, actual financial results are unlikely to perfectly align with the budgeted expectations. Shown on the slide is a good news story. The overall operating budget surplus was almost $6.2 million, with the proposed budget carry forwards of $270,000. The operating surplus, it's approximately $5.9 million. What's important to note is that a review of the prior year budget variances not only provides a measure of the previous year's results, it also helps with current year forecasting and formulation of the upcoming year's budget based on recent experience. Next slide, please. For 2023 year-end, the city is reporting a $5.9 million surplus on a $200 million budget. As a percentage of the budget, the surplus is approximately 2.9%. As you can see from the slide, the surplus is made up of positive as well as negative factors, and one of the primary contributors to the surplus is the investment income returns due to a very favorable investment environment. Excluding this, the surplus is $2.4 million, or 1.4%, which means the city came in at 98.6% to budget in 2023. I'll go into the details of the variances in the upcoming slides. The surplus from the investment income is recommended to be allocated to the tax rate stabilization reserve. It's seen to be a one-time in nature. The remaining surplus will be split between the tax rate stabilization reserve, as well as the community enhancement and economic vitality reserve fund. This will help achieve the target reserve balance to potentially offset future tax rates and fluctuations in investment income in the future years. The allocation to the CEEV, or the Community Enhancement and Economic Vitality Reserve Fund, will enhance the balance of that reserve fund for future community projects and the additional interest generated may be used to fund the Community and Cultural Grants Program to support local community and cultural organizations. Next slide, please. The positive contributors are either higher revenues or lower expenses to budget. This slide highlights the most notable ones, totaling almost $10 million. Investment income exceeded budget by $3.5 million, and it is as a result of the rapid interest rate hike that took place at the end of 2022 into 2023. At the time of the budget was prepared, the Bank of Canada overnight rate was at 3.25% in 2022. With multiple increases throughout the first part of 2023 until July, it left with an overnight rate of 5%. So as you can see, the interest rate itself went from 3.25 to 5% after those hikes. Through the interest rate hikes and making prudent investment decisions, we're now able to take the opportunity to top up the tax rate stabilization reserve. Consistent with the prior year, we're also seeing an upward trend on penalties and interest as a result of tax receivables. There is a plan in place to reduce the receivables, which includes reinitiating collection procedures, as noted previously. The goal is to lower receivables and the amount of tax arrears overall. Payment in lieu of taxes for York Region Transit Facility on Orlando Drive has been a recurring item for a number of years. We continue to report it as a favorable variance to budget because it is in a budgeted item. Reason being, there are ongoing discussions between the region and the province to make regulatory changes to exempt this property from taxation. So that's why we continue to leave it in our budget as an unbudgeted item so that we're able to recognize it as a variance. The other portion of the variance relates to Metrolinx and the Bloomington GO Station and the reassessment values dating back 3 years. So that's why you're seeing an overall nearly $900,000 in payment in lieu of taxes. Moving along, facility utilities were underspent due to lower hydro consumption at major facilities. As staff were able to find utility efficiencies through the reprogramming of the building automation system by optimizing and managing building temperature, humidity, and internal climate control. These savings are also reflected in the 2024 budget. Aquatics, fitness, and recreation programs were about $1.2 million favorable, resulting from stronger than expected membership returns, increased program offerings, as well as a higher participation rate, returning to and exceeding the pre-pandemic levels. To put it into perspective, the fill rate or the participation rate averaged about 77% in 2019, and it was 87% in 2023, with similar trends in 2024, which would all generate additional revenues for us. Just moving along on the slide, refuse collection and recycling contracts expenses were lower than expected because of the curbside waste tonnage collected. We also saw a milder winter in 2022, 2023. So overall, there were fewer contractor deployments. There is an upward trend in lottery license revenues reflecting the city's share of those revenues. We also saw savings in vehicle maintenance and fleet as a result of lower fuel costs, maintenance from replacing end-of-life assets and downsizing vehicle rentals. Also, what you see is that there was a favorable contract renewal rate or rates related to IT software and hardware maintenance, and it also has to do with greater focus on license optimization and usage. This slide highlights a summary of the positive contributors. Some of these variances are one-time in nature. Others may be known but dependent on external factors. The really important takeaway from this slide is the spirit and culture of continuous improvement. As you can see, not just at budget, but throughout the year, staff are always looking at opportunities to find savings and efficiencies. It was evident in finding utility efficiencies, increasing program offerings in recreation, favorable contract renewal rates, and focusing on license optimization. These are deliberate and ongoing efforts to maximize taxpayer dollars. These savings are then translated into future budgets. Next slide, please. On the other hand, negative variance contributors reflect lower revenues or greater expenses than budget. We've been seeing a downward trend since the pandemic on supplementary assessments. So supplementary tax revenues are related to new properties that are coming on board that had alterations or improvements that were not reflected on the original, the previous assessment. After 2 years of growth post-COVID, MPAC is reporting new assessment lower than originally forecasted. What you also see on this slide is the firefighter shift premium and overtime was overspent, primarily due to backfilling of vacancies and temporary acting supervisor roles. The most recent actuarial review done in 2021 indicated both the WSIB reserve and the sick leave reserve are depleting and require replenishment to fulfill the city's future liabilities. So what you see on the slide is transfers made in 2023 to gradually improve the reserve fund position to meet these future obligations. A provision for uncollectible taxes has been established to set aside funds to account for properties with tax arrears that are deemed to be at risk and potentially uncollectible. And there could be a variety of reasons as to why. Title uncertainty, remnant properties, and properties owned by dissolved corporations. Properties that are partially underwater, arrears dating back a number of years, or having greater than 10% of the CVA that's in arrears. We have an annual report presented to council on tax adjustments and treasurer's write-off. This provision aligns with the accounting for those potentials. What you also see on this slide is the rising costs in materials and contract pricing that contribute to the negative variance in roads contracts, as well as janitorial expenses at the operations center. Also related to contract pricing, the cost of ActiveNet software, we saw a 4% unbudgeted increase. It's combined with the increase in registered transactions from strong performance in the programs. We saw the upside on the earlier slide where we saw the increase in recreation revenues. So this is what you're seeing as the offset, the costs that are related to that. Last but not least, for subdivision winter maintenance, we have been experiencing a downward trend as well over the last couple of years. And it's really due to a reduction in subdivision development. So there is less winter control work that is requested from the developers. Hence, we're seeing a lower revenue. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the budget carry forwards, which represent the unspent 2023 budget that are being requested to be carried forward into 2024 so that we can finish those initiatives in the 2024 year. So what you see, it's approximately $271,000 with the details that are noted above. Next slide, please. A quick update on the Safe Restart Agreement funding. In 2020, the federal and provincial governments provided assistance to the city in the form of the Safe Restart Agreement and COVID recovery grants. In total, Richmond Hill received $11.5 million. This table shows the history of how the grant has been allocated throughout the years. There's approximately $1.4 million remaining after the allocation in 2023. What I would also like to point out is that in the 2024 operating budget, we did factor in 1.02 million of that 1.4 million in the budget to support ongoing recovery initiatives in the aquatic section. Next slide, please. So moving away from the operating fund, this slide highlights the water and wastewater results for 2023. The water and wastewater fees are collected from residents and businesses, and they help to support the operations, maintenance, and repair of the water, as well as sanitary systems. These financial results are presented under the Water Wastewater Fund. Overall, we're almost to budget at 99.9%. We did see a lower volume consumption and higher water loss compared to budget. However, that's offset by increased revenues and investment income, resulting in a small surplus of $84,000. So the recommendation is to transfer that to the water rate stabilization reserve. Next slide, please. Similarly, we do report on the stormwater management results separate from the operating fund. The stormwater management fund summarizes the stormwater fee revenues that are collected and that are used to offset against the cost of maintaining the stormwater ponds, storm sewers, as well as catch basins. For 2023, we're reporting a small deficit of $83,000. Again, relative to the budget, we're at 98.5% to budget. And the reason why we have that small deficit is due to the increased number of infrastructure repairs, as well as rehabilitation of the storm sewers. So the deficit will be funded from the Water Quality Protection Reserve Fund. Next slide, please. The recommendations of the report are shown on the slide. Mr. Chair, that concludes the first presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Treasurer. I just wanted to make a comment before I open up for questions. That big, the biggest change in that we forecasted, we under forecasted our investment income. I just think it's important that everyone remember that, well, 10 years ago, we were drastically overestimating our investment income, expecting 4%. We were getting 4% for a while, and that dropped to 1.5% or to 2%. And we were reeling for years. It took us 5 years to gradually get the mill rate stabilization where it belonged, because it was being drawn upon. And so this isn't extra money that we have to allocate somewhere else. I think our staff's really recommending the right place and going to mill rate stabilization, because this year it is what it is, but it may be different, and we have to brace for those fluctuations. That will happen, and our staff's going to they do a great job, and as best as they are able to. And since it's impacted by factors that are external to our operation, but they try to assess what the interest rates will be. They do a good job at doing that, and also how many people late pay. Basically, if you're the longer you take to pay your property taxes, the more revenue we collect, is the more you end up paying because of interest. And through, I guess, hard times in 2023, our residents were a little slower to pay, and it resulted in higher revenues for us. And we can't count on that. These one-offs happen, and some years, and I hope it's this year, our residents will pay sooner, and that number will be lower. So we have to allow those things to fluctuate, allow our staff to estimate as well as they can, but we can't get caught up with the big numbers. It's not like we got a windfall, or we have an extra $5 million to spend here. These fluctuations occur from year to year. So I'll open it up to the floor for councillors that have questions, and I'll go first. First, the mayor. We will do questions, and if you want to move the motion, we'll move the motion and ask questions while we're debating it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Gigi, and all of the staff that do such great work all the time on this process. It's a long process. It doesn't just magically appear at the end. It's we're in the meat and potatoes of the lead up to actually approving a budget. I would like to move a slightly modified motion at this time, and the only modification, if Mr. Clerk, if you could just put that up on the screen. I do want. We've had conversations about the windfall that we have this year, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But the final thing that I'd like to do is I'd like staff to report back on how the interest only portion of the Community and Economic Vitality Reserve contribution that we're going to be making this year can be used to help supplement or solidify or increase the benefit of the Community and Cultural Grant Program. So I'd like that to be reported back, and we can do that within the budget cycle that we're in right now. I guess what I would say is that this is not normal for us to have a budget surplus that's like this, and I think it's an opportunity for us to do something good with it, which I believe all of what the staff is recommending does fit that bill. I just think that the one thing I'd like to see, though, is a greater ability for us to be able to add to the culture and community grant applications that we have in place. Over time, the costs for our community partners has definitely gone up. in terms of the cost of putting on an event or doing the things that we give grants for. And I think if we can supplement that and or find other ways to give grants to our community partners to put on events and help to really drive some of the excellent work that our grant recipients do every year, that really goes a long way to enrich our community. I think that we would be serving our community well. And to be clear, what I would be looking for here is to only be spending the interest on that 1.2 million. I would not be asking for us to be going into the principal. So, we'll have to see how this all works out going forward, but I'd like them to report back on that. In general, I just wanted to make some comments that, and I liked what you said, Ms. Lee, that, there was a spirit and culture of continuous improvement that goes on here in Richmond Hill. And on slide number 4, it lists all of the different positive contributions or contributors to this surplus. And some of those are truly windfalls. The fact that we had a lower than expected cost of clearing snow. I mean, we don't have control over that, obviously, but we're even in a situation like that, we're well positioned because of the work that staff does to always look for efficiencies and look at better ways of doing things. We're always there, prepared to take advantage of situations like that when they arise. And this year, I believe, is one of those years where if we weren't doing all the right things leading up to a windfall year like this, our benefit from all that work would not be as high as what you're seeing here today. So I certainly would encourage staff to continue to, sharpen the pencil, do everything you can to look for efficiencies. And I know that's what we're going to be doing. But I think that the way that this motion instructs staff to use this kind of unusually high amount of budget surplus really helps us in the future. I mean, we're adding to the tax rate stabilization in a pretty large way, which, as Chair DiPaolo said, has been drawn down over the years due to a number of different factors. So we're using that or building that up again so that we can use that at some later time when we really need it to help to reduce, larger tax increases that we may be faced with. So I think, and then the Community Economic Vitality and Enhancement Fund, I think will help. The $1.2 million contribution will be a good thing for that fund that we can use at some later date. But as I said, in number D, we're also going to be able to leverage the income or the interest income from that amount of money to do immediately good things in the community with regard to the cultural grant program. So anyway, thank you again for the work. I'm obviously more than happy to support the recommendations with the addition of D. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
So we have a motion on the floor that includes an additional item D to the staff recommendation. Thank you for that. So further discussion will go to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I definitely want to thank staff for all their work here. This is actually, to me, this is quite something. This is not from luck. This is management. This is incredible when you see that we come within 1.6% of the forecast. That's quite remarkable, and kudos to our staff for that. I do want to tack on to what Mayor West has said about the grants, and something that I'd like to see kept also in the radar for this would be with heritage as well. So I don't believe the program there has changed in a while. They're sitting at $5,000, I believe, is what's eligible for those that have designated properties. And in today's economy, $5,000 really doesn't go that far. So if we're looking at grants, I'd like to see if that could be on the radar at the same time. So those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I echo all speakers before me, the consistent, I use the term consistent prudent management practices of our staff. As I said 13 months ago in June 2023, consistently, there has been a pattern. At the end of the year, there's always, now there are certain things beyond our expectation. We don't have a crystal ball in front of us, as the chair was saying, but consistently that there always either small or big surplus in the end, which is great. It demonstrates the prudent management practices, strategy of our staff year after year after year. So this is not a one-time wonder. I just want to stress that. Number two, through you, Mr. Chair, I do understand on slide number 4, I believe, in terms of possible contributors, it's great to have another $3.5 million that we didn't expect earlier on for investment income. That comprises 1/3 of the total, almost 10 million. I got it. So we would never know that, but some certain things perhaps through the chair, Treasurer Lee may enlighten us. Is that expectation presumably can continue in the future years, the payment in lieu of taxation from York Region Transit and Metrolinx? That's one item. Through Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Chen, as I mentioned earlier, the reason why reporting it as a favorable variance, it's because it's an unbudgeted item. There are ongoing discussions between the region and the province. The region is requesting for this property to be exempt from property taxes. As I said, the discussions are still ongoing. Don't know what's going to transpire from that, but for now, we're going to continue to recognize it as an unbudgeted item. And we have had over the last few years.
Thank you. And that's my understanding. That's why this might or might not happening in a year from now, seeing whether that would be a positive contributor. If I can move on slide number 5 on the negative contributors. I have to say, just looking on numbers, I would like to get a sense that whether in fact we are one-time thing, 1 year thing, or there may be potentially looking into something in the future years. Specifically, I look at a total of almost $1 million on the second row on slide 5, firefighter ship premium overtime, 559,000, and then the fourth line, the sick leave reserve fund. So, through you, Mr. Chair, to Treasurer Lee, will your expectation to be this is a one-time, 1 year kind of thing, or it may be signaling something we have to watch for in at least the foreseeable future? Thank you.
Through the chair. So with respect to the first item, firefighter shift premiums and OT, they have to do with premiums for filling supervisory roles with supervisors on an acting role. Also overtime for backfilling vacancies from long-term WSIB injuries, retirements, and other leaves, and they're all part of the collective agreement. What I would say is that that would be more of not one time in nature, but like it's going to depend on the staffing complement and, you know, the situation from there. Because as I mentioned earlier, it has to do with the vacancies and some of the other leaves that are ongoing. With respect to the transfer to the sick leave reserve fund, so that is an obligation that was identified in the actuarial review that we are short of our obligations. So we have started contributing over the last few years, as well as in the budget as well. We are increasing the contributions reserve fund to the reserve so that we're able to top it up to meet the obligation or the level that's outlined in the actual report. So we're going to continue to gradually make those investments or non-investments, make those allocations into the reserve until we reach the level that is required and recommended by the actuarial review. What I also add is that the actual review is done every 3 years or so. So, you know, at the next time when we do the actual review, again, we'll make sure that we are aligning to the findings of that report.
Thank you. So my takeaway from your answer is that we would still see that the top up to the firefighter sick leave reserve fund next year. Correct? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, as I mentioned earlier, this has to do with some of the vacancies. So, you know, things may change. So when the positions are filled and the positions are paid, and perhaps less on the overtime. So it's going to fluctuate based on the complement that we have. But perhaps we'll still see it, but at a lesser level. It really is going to be dependent on the staffing.
Thank you. And the last item on this slide is on retiree benefits. The amount may be modest, 153,500 this year or this past year, but I could be wrong, but everybody's talking about the demographic shift, meaning expecting Richmond is not exceptional. Lots of organizations seeing more and more people, baby boomers, so to speak, are retiring. Would that potentially factor in 2024 and down the road, that potentially that we might be a situation that retirement benefits would have to increase, so hopefully not in a negative contributor in the years to come, through Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to the Regional Councillor Tan, you are correct. We have been experiencing an increasing number of eligible retirees over the recent years, and that has been trending up since 2019. So we did go from 42 in 2019 to the 93 that we're accounting for in 2023. So I think to your point, we will have to monitor that to make sure that we're accounting for that in the budget process.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because now we're looking back, but I think really important to learn from those lessons or the data. So we have to look forward. So thank you for that. And I do support the motion, in particular, like the new one the mayor suggests, to expand on the dollar amount we have for the community cultural grant. At some point in time down the road is maybe a public works budget. Some of those things that may be put away behind for a while, may have to look at. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Treasurer and your whole team and the city manager and the whole operation in doing year after year. I'm glad to see it's always a surplus at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Councillor David.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. One is slide 5, the overtime for our fire and safety services it's over $500,000. Is that usual, or is that unexpected? Or I guess my question is, if there's that much overtime, and I'm reading that as over budget, right? Is that right?
Through the chair to Councillor Davidson, that's correct.
So is that unique, or are we not staffing, providing enough money to have appropriate staff levels? That just seems like a lot to me. Or is that something that happens every year because it's unpredictable staffing in that line of work?
Through the chair. So perhaps it's more appropriate that Commissioner Steele can provide a response to that.
Yeah, it was slide 5, I think.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think what you're seeing is a combination of two things. In 2023, we tried to change the way that we were budgeting for this, and it didn't work out quite the way we planned it, which is what's showing the amount that's over budget. In 2024, we are trying some different approaches to minimize this and bring it down, and so I think you'll see it come down in 2024.
Okay, thank you. I guess my worry is, do we have the complement of people we need? Are we scraped? Anyway, I will leave it in your capable hands. My other question is just sort of a general misunderstanding of the stormwater management slides there. Can you just tell me if stormwater management ended up being a negative or a plus? I feel like we just implemented a new, through you, Mr. Chair, didn't we just implement a new way of assessing stormwater charges? Has that come into effect yet?
Through the chair to Councillor Davidson, it did. So we did implement in 2024, April, the new rate structure, the refined rate structure. If we can go back to slide number 9. So what you see on the slide is a small deficit of $83,000 related to stormwater management. As you can see in the note there, it's not related to the revenue, so it's not related to how we generated revenues, but more on the increased number of infrastructure repairs. So it's more on the expenditure side. But again, back to your initial question, that refined rate structure was implemented
A month ago.
April of this year.
Okay, so could I please see the slide 8, the one previous to this? So I guess my question is, so this is, I guess the numbers bamboozle me a little bit, but are we on track for doing what we need to do for proper stormwater management without going in the hole? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Councillor Davidson. So that is a question that requires a lot of explanation.
Oh, okay.
Because we had talked about throughout the rate structure review that there are two issues that we're trying to tackle. One of which was the equity perspective, which was, paying a flat rate versus paying by impervious areas, and also dependent on the types of property that they have, which will then dictate the actual fee. The other side of it is that we have historically been underfunding stormwater management, right? So we have talked about that throughout the last year when we came back on the stormwater rate review, the rate structure review. And we did commit to council that we would be coming back in Q3 of this year with a stormwater management financial plan. So to answer your question, we took care of the rate structure piece, which is more about the equity. We're now having to focus our efforts on funding of the infrastructure to make sure that we are able to invest in stormwater management infrastructure and also maintaining that infrastructure in a state of good repair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to our Director, Gigi Lee. Thank you so much for putting all this information here as well. Also, a lot of the councillor already asked good questions. I got most of them covered. So I do have another few here as well. The first one, I remember last year, December 2023, we had a meeting here in this chamber discussing a two surplus. I remember one is around $400,000, another one is $200,000. Totally are $6,000. Are that part of this surplus? So we approved, I remember, $600,000 put it into the reserve. That was the last year, December's meeting. Is that part of the surplus or separate?
Through the chair to the councillor, I do apologize. I don't know which meeting or report you're referencing. I can certainly look back and provide you with a response. But for the purpose of providing an update on the operating results, this is it for 2023. So perhaps at some point in 2023, we might have done a forecast on 2023. Maybe those are numbers you're referencing. But this would be the result of 2023 and operationally where we ended, and that's at a $5.9 million surplus.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want on acknowledge here. So for the, maybe I'm not sure who is on the public side. We have 4 categories for our budgeting. So one is for operation, another one is for the infrastructure, another one is watering and also stormwater. So this topic is only discussing one of the category, which is operation only, right?
The operating results, that's correct, through the chair. The operating results, it's only focused on the operating fund or operating budget. So then the other 2 slides focus on the water, wastewater, as well as stormwater management.
Okay, for the infrastructure project related one, will be a separate discussion of this today's meeting scope, right?
Through the chair, are you referring to the capital asset
Yes,
levy?
that's right.
Okay, so that is a contribution into the reserve fund. So there is no variance to that because that's a levy that goes towards the reserve funds to fund for capital, tax supported capital infrastructure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I do have my last questions regarding to the, I won't say question, maybe it's information sharing. as our mayor mentioned, so we do this year have a lot of surplus. It's great. And consider the property tax increasement. Last year, we used up around 4 point something from the operation side. And since this year we have pressures, I remember the projection for operation side going to be around 5 something. So is that possible? All the council members, also the staff can consider end of the year if you have a new budgeting meetings for 2025, some portion of this surplus can be used to reduce the tax rates for 2025. That's just for reminder. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So next is Councillor Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Gigi and your team for your great effort. It's really good news that we have surplus. I have only 2 questions. The first one through the chair is regarding the slide number 7, Safe Restart Agreement fundings. We understand that is COVID-related spending. So, but where exactly the money was being spent, actually?
So through the chair to Councillor Hsu, throughout the first couple of years of COVID, it was on a lot of COVID-related items. So we incurred expenses that are directly attributable to COVID. We also, as a result of the closure of the recreation facility, so we lost the revenues, and also operationally, we identified, and that's how we reported the variances over those years, right? We tried to separate out the COVID-related expenses versus was business as usual. In 2023, and I believe for the most part in 2022 as well, we have allocated the funding towards the recovery of the recreation program. So, as we came out of COVID, post-pandemic, it took a while to gradually ramp up, and then the participation rates were not meeting, were not as expected as well. So we did use the funding to offset some of the revenue losses related to COVID. So what you see on the slide 7 as well is we continue to do that in 2023 and also in 2024, that it has to do with ongoing recovery initiatives in the aquatic section. But what I've also noted earlier as well, and as you saw through the earlier slide on the surplus, we are also experiencing an uptick in the participation and the fill rates. So as part of the 2025 budget, that's what we're going to be looking at, right? So it is looking at the recent trends and experiences, looking at the savings and efficiency, looking at a surplus or trends that we're seeing here so that we can then apply that as we're working on the 2025 budget.
Okay, so that means after spending $1.02 million from this year's budget, there will be only $400,000 left, right?
Approximately 400.
Yeah. So is there any specific time frame for using up all these SRA fundings?
There's no specific timing, and as a matter of fact, the mandatory reporting was only for the first year as well. So it has been quite flexible, but what we've done here as a city is that we continue to match that to COVID-related expenses so that, we're able to still align that to the intent and purpose of the grant.
I see. So my last question through Mr. Chair is, we have a deficit in the stormwater budget, and some of my colleagues mentioned about this. So we understand that there will be a new rate structure from this year, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Hsu. So the rate structure has been approved and adopted.
Okay.
And it was implemented in April.
Okay. And so does it mean that this deficit only for 2023? This deficit is only for last year, right? So, and there will be no longer deficit from this year.
Through the chair to Councillor Hsu. So the $83,000 was specific to the 2023 operating results for stormwater management. As I noted earlier, we implemented the refined rate structure in 2024. So that took care of the equity component of 2 of the issues or two of the issues that we were trying to address, right? So it's the rate structure and the equity piece. And the other piece was historically, we have been underfunding stormwater management infrastructure. So we will be coming back in Q3 with a stormwater management financial plan. So we're doing a lot of the background work right now. We did reach out, and we do have a consultant on board, and we're doing that along with a consultant right now. So the short answer is what you saw as 83 was specifically only related to 2023, but there's more work that staff are doing right now relating to stormwater management. So we'll be coming back with a financial plan to provide council with an update.
So that means, is there any projection that under the new rate structure, will the deficit still there or persist there, or will be a balance, or will be surplus then? Is there any projection?
Let me say this through the chair. The rate structure, in my opinion, it's where it needs to be. Where we have to look and investigate and do more analysis on and to provide update to council is the impact of the historical underfunding of stormwater management infrastructure and what we need to do now to increase funding to make sure that we don't, that we're able to continue to maintain these infrastructures in a state of good repair, or that we don't, we have to invest more into stormwater, and that's what you're going to be seeing, because we have been historically deferring the funding to the next year and the year after. So we're at a point where our reserve fund is depleted, and that's why we're coming back to propose a plan with the financial plan that's going to be based on what our needs are, operating as well as capital.
Understood. So appreciate that your work. And that's all my question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Silovitz online, you're next there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my thanks, as always, to our treasurer, who does a superb job, as always, and to our finance team, who are superb at what they do in directing and managing our city on our behalf, and our residents. I just have one question to you, Mr. Chair. Could we go to slide number 5, please? Thank you. At the bottom 2 lines, so the retiree benefit for 153.5, to you, Mr. Chair, to our treasurer, is that only for the year 2023, or is that a cumulative over a specific period of time? And does it refer to staff as well as past members of council?
Through the chair to Councillor Silovitz, so that would relate to specifically to 2023 and the number of retirees from 2023.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And then my second question to you, Mr. Chair, is the other. So the bottom line. So other for 50,810. Can you please be a little bit more specific? What does other entail?
Through the chair to Councillor Silovitz, we can get back to you on that one. So essentially the 50,000, it's a collection of a lot of small accounts that add up to the 50, but we can certainly provide that to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that that's everyone who wanted to speak or ask questions. I just want to say that I fully support the recommendations made by our staff, and I support the recommended addition by the mayor. It's a very small amount that we have for our community and cultural grants. This money is leveraged so well by our community, and this additional request is would amount to a mere $40,000. a year. I think that fund is about 60,000. So it's a big percentage increase, but getting even to 100,000, I think it's still still could be higher. I think that's getting closer to where it needs to be because it's used so well. I think that's a very, very, very appropriate use and appropriate request. And of course, we'll evaluate further when the report comes back from our staff. Overall, I just want everyone to understand today we're talking about variances and that's it. Even though the word surplus and deficit is used, and that's the proper term, but all we're saying is, based on all our budget items predicted at the beginning of the year, this is actually what happened, and some came in higher and some came in lower, as would have to be the case. It'd be impossible to predict with precision what each budget line item is going to fall at. So that's where we are. This is not deficit in the way higher levels of government talk about deficits. In the province and the federal government, they run deficits. That means they borrow money to pay for it. They spend more than they collect, and we don't do that. We spend exactly what we collect, and if it's not enough, we ask for a little bit more, and that's what we do. And if we have a little left over, then we put it aside for variances in future years. So these are just variances that we're discussing today on operating water and wastewater. With water and wastewater, we've got a much fairer system in place. That's all it is. The same amount of money, but the ratio of each property class who pays what has been adjusted to a much more fair system. There were some real unfairness, some huge commercial properties that were paying very little, some tiny rural properties that were paying more than they should, and that adjustment's been made in the ratio of who pays what. But yeah, we have a lot of work to do, and we get to that in the Capital Asset Sustainability Committee, and we don't confuse the two. This is just discussion today about that operating costs, and we have that bigger picture to always consider. But our staff's doing a great job working on it. We've got they're coming forward with lots of suggestions and making sure that we are going to be stable going forward and sustaining our capital assets. So I think it is good news that there are in this case additional monies to be transferred to those reserves, but they were, as I said earlier, they were very insufficiently funded in the past and drawn upon many times. So this is only beginning to catch up. This isn't we're not done in terms of the tax rate stabilization reserve being where we would like it to be, but it's a lot closer. And this helps. It's good news, but the interest rate is constantly in flux, and that accounts for so much. And beyond the interest rate and the late penalties, this is 1%. Our staff, our budget process last year was able to come within 1% on everything else. Of what predicting what we would spend and what we actually spend with all those external factors that are outside of our control. They've done a great job. So I support the motion on the floor. I don't see other speakers, so I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, it carries unanimously. Line there. Okay, we move to item 5.2. Again, it's a presentation by Gigi Lee, our Director of Financial Services and Treasurer. This one will be 10 minutes, and it's about our investment portfolio results. Go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the second presentation I have is on the 2023 investment portfolio results, and that's agenda item 5.2. The city's investments are governed by the Municipal Act as well as the city's investment policy approved by council. I want to highlight the objectives of the city's investment policy in order of priority and their compliance to statutory requirements, preservation and security of capital, maintenance of necessary liquidity, and last but not least, realizing a competitive rate of return. Next slide, please. What you see on this slide is a summary table of the investment portfolio results. The city holds cash, short-term as well as long-term securities. The investment portfolio results are based on the average balance and broken out by short and long-term. As you can see on the slide, in 2023, the city had an average balance of $650 million. The investment income generated was approximately $26.4 million, or about a 4.06% return. In comparison to the 2022 investment income, which is also shown on the slide, that was at 16.5 and 2.65%. It is primarily the result of those rapid increases of interest rates from late 2022 into mid-2023, combined with prudent investment decisions on the portfolio. The city also renegotiated its deposit interest agreement with its main bank, which also lifted interest rate on the cash balance. Investment income earned on the short-term investments reached a new record in 2023, along with favorable returns in both fixed income as well as equity holdings. And that generated a positive mark-to-market, as you can see on the slide, of 8.68%, which combines the realized investment income with mark-to-market adjustments to reflect the change in market values. What you see also on the slide is our portfolio total return at 8.68%, which is the last column to the right. That exceeded the mark-to-market return for 2022. As well, it exceeded the benchmark that we benchmark ourselves to, as they had a total return in 2023 of 7.39%. So we did exceed that by 1.29%. Next slide, please. The city's investment policy is reviewed at least annually and was last updated in 2021. Financial market conditions have changed drastically. So in response, staff are seeking approval to fine-tune the policy to ensure the portfolio is set up for ongoing success while being prepared to capitalize on future opportunities that come forward. This slide here outlines the proposed update to the policy limit. So as you can see, we have the existing policy limit on one investment and the categories or sectors within that. And the proposal is that we would increase each sector exposure by 5% to provide more flexibility in making investment decisions that benefit the portfolio. It is a small change, but we wanted to bring that up as part of the investment portfolio results so that council has the ability to look at what we have in terms of the existing policy, as well as the changes that we're proposing, which is essentially lifting or increasing the existing policy limit by 5% in those sectors. Next slide, please. This is a short presentation. So on the slide, I have the recommendations from the report. Mr. Chair, that concludes the second presentation.
Okay, good, very good. Yeah, we don't mind short presentations. That's okay. Okay, so we'll bring it back to council and we'll do the same thing. Ask for a motion first. Go ahead, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. I'll move the motion. Is that what you're asking?
Please,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just have one question. There's a lot of talk that the Bank of Canada is going to lower the rate. Is that in the projections for next year to consider, or do we act after it's happened as a city?
Through the chair to Councillor Davidson. So definitely, I do believe the next interest rate announcement will be next Tuesday, I believe, on June 5th or June 5th, Wednesday. The market is pricing for that first interest rate reduction next year, if not July. So we are monitoring and we are also doing the analysis internally. As of now, I do believe we're estimating 2 to 3 reductions in this year, probably going into 2025. But what's important to note that we may recall back in 2022, going to 2023, almost every announcement, they were increasing either by 25 basis points or 50, so it was rapid. On the flip side, even if the Bank of Canada will be reducing the interest rates, we do expect that to be more gradual because they'll have to see more numbers, economic indicators that are coming in to make sure that they're not doing too fast, too much, too soon.
So just to confirm through you, Mr. Chair, we consider for 2025's budget projections, the change in interest rates, whatever it is considered and part of it.
It's through the chair to Councillor Davidson. That's correct. As a matter of fact, we do that for our 2024 forecast till the end of the year. And we'll also factor that as we do the 2025 budget.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the motion on the floor to adopt the staff recommendations. Any other questions about our investment portfolio? Okay, see none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, we moved to item 5.3. And now we have our reserve and reserve fund status. There's no presentation on this. Is there a member that wants to move recommendations? Okay, Mayor West. Gonna move, and you want to speak as well? Any comments, any questions on that? Yeah, see none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Go to item 5.4. Again, no presentations. This is our 2023 development charges, just a status update there. Anyone willing to move the staff recommendations? Okay, Councillor Tree. Any discussion, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries all 9 of us, unanimous. And one more motion that will probably be unanimous too. I need the motion to adjourn. I don't like to speculate, but all in favor of adjourning? Any opposed? I didn't think so. Okay, that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much, Madam Treasurer. Thank you, everyone.